Thank you, Jason. It's great to be here today. So my name is Louise Keenan Clarke, and after a 20-year career in global leadership roles in banking, I have established a business, Succeed with Confidence, to help businesses and people within businesses communicate better.
You mentioned there about obviously working in the banking sector, and I think from my research, a lot of leadership roles within that sector. Could you tell me a bit about what those leadership roles were and what type of work it is that you do?
Of course. So 21 years being a long time, and I know I'm aging myself with that. Over that time, I started with a graduate program. So I went in from a very academic background into banking, and I spent 15 years in corporate and investment banking. And a lot of that was working frontline with businesses and really helping businesses from the financial and their business strategy, I suppose, point. I did that working for Irish, UK, and I lived in Australia and worked for an Australian bank as part of all of that as well. And for the last 6 years then, I moved solely into investment banking and leading teams in very different areas which were outside of my, I suppose, 15-year experience and comfort zone. So I ran, first of all, a global team in a data role. I then ran a global team in a technology function. And finally, then my last role was running a global team within internal audit. So the only reason that I give you that kind of detail is those first 15 years were very much the area that I was constantly building a consistent career and a very kind of linear trajectory in. And when I moved into those other areas, I really got the opportunity to step outside of my own comfort zone, I suppose, develop myself in different ways as well. But it really let me see that, you know, anyone can kind of come in and lead in an area that's not their background if they have certain skills that they've developed in themselves. And as part of that as well, I really saw that I was always brought into those last 3 areas, which were new to me, and regularly the people that I was set up to manage had actually gone for those leadership roles as well, and were very technically experienced. But I suppose the difference between us at that point was I didn't have the subject matter expertise, but had the those leadership and communication skills, which makes the difference. And what I really love now, and why I'm working in the way that I am, is I'm really helping technical focused leaders work in a way where they can really elevate their own communication and leadership skills to give them that opportunity to succeed as well.
It's very interesting there. I'm thinking of the old sports analogy when you talk about if you have a good skill set,
yes,
you actually don't need to be, I suppose the example is like if you work in a software sector, some of the leadership team will never have coded.
Yes, of
and
course.
I'm coders,
yeah.
And I always use the analogy of sport as well. It's very rarely do you see the best players or best athletes become the best coaches.
Yeah, okay.
It's that concept of, you know, do you have leadership skills, and
yes,
the value of those leadership skills in that position supersede the actual skill of doing the job itself sometimes.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And while I am in no means any kind of sporting expert, even in the viewing, my family, my children would know a lot more about all of that than me. I have seen that, and when I had noticed that, you know, someone that's a really, really renowned manager in soccer, for example, you know, and I'd always maybe ask the question, oh yeah, they did play, but not really for the top teams. But I suppose they've gone and developed their skills in the expertise that work best for them. Yeah. And I suppose also it's given them longevity in their careers as well.
I think you can see that in businesses all the time. You know, I worked years ago in the motor trade, was never a mechanic, but I had a set of skills that motivated and and help mechanics achieve their performance levels that they needed. I think that's always a thing. It's leadership is slightly different in the concept of what skill set you need. It's about nurturing skills more than it is about having to have those skills. So you can understand what they're trying to achieve. It's your job is to put the jigsaw puzzle together for them.
No, and I like how you say that. I think that's so important. It's working with the people, and actually they always say like the sign of a good leader is actually who you're developing, and actually nearly that you're developing people 2 levels below yourself, that you know that you have that you kind of have that reach as well. There's
a very interesting story around leadership that I love, and it's something that sticks in my head, is that in the era of compliance as we see it at the moment, that we over-focus sometimes in a lot of organisations. Is everybody compliant? Is everybody doing what they should be doing? And I always talk about there's the lovely story Rory Sutherland tells it, if you ever heard about the bumblebees.
I'm not sure.
Rory Sutherland tells this amazing story about bumblebees that have been on the earth for billions of years, and that they do this thing called the waggle dance.
Right.
And the way he explains it is that this waggle dance is literally that bees go out, find honey and nectar, and they do this dance to tell everybody, all the other bees, where the best honey and where the best nectar is. So it's like, come and follow me. This is where we should be going to get the best product that we're looking for. So when they go there, what the scientists in that area found very frustrating or couldn't understand was that 20% of bees ignore the waggle dance.
Right, okay.
So they'd like just totally ignore what's going on.
They're not bought in.
And then Rory Sutherland puts it in such a sense, is that they're the ones that keep the species surviving. Right. Because they're the ones that disappear and go off on their own wee tangent or coming up with their own wee ideas, and they actually find the new honey and nectar.
Right, okay.
Because if everybody just complied, so if you had compliance officers, as we know them, pushing them all to the compliance area, then the species would have most likely died out.
Yes, of course.
Because they would have eventually run out of resource.
They'd all be,
And I always think of that, and I love it, because I always say, what's very interesting about that is that if you have somebody in your team that is a bit out there or going off skew, yes, are the rules or laws that they're breaking going to cause you legislative problems, or are they just coming up with new ideas and new ways of doing things, and is it something you should be watching and observing rather than trying to stop? So I sort of love that in a leadership role.
I do love that, and I hadn't heard that before, and it makes a lot of sense too. You know, you're trying to funnel everybody, and I suppose to lead, you do have to have definitely a certain number of people, and the majority of people coming in under the plan, but it's that whole fostering psychological safety as well, that that there's enough trust and enough rope, I suppose, to allow somebody maybe to go and try out different things. And you don't always you shouldn't employ people just to do exactly what you want. You should employ them for their skills and their abilities. And, there's obviously, I've come out of 20 years of a very highly regulated environment, of course, so but where there's opportunity to allow people to use their creativity. That's why I'm enjoying creative life.
That moves me on to something very interesting. You obviously spent, as you say, a long, long time working for an organisation. Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, I would assume good career, good opportunities, very secure. Mm-hmm. Whatever possessed you to become self-employed, go self-employed? Yeah, well, do you know what? There's a lot. So yes, as you say, I like that trajectory. So I didn't stay with the one bank, but I was always in banking. I worked for Irish, I had mentioned that part of it, different banks here. Then I went to Australia, came back, and I worked for one massive international bank and one global. So I saw a lot of things, I learned a lot of things, and I've loved, and I've been able to take a lot of that with me in my last role too. So I think I'm also very passionate about actually making a difference and like helping, empowering people. And it's not always, there's only so many confines that you can work within in that type of really regulated environment. In my last with my last bank, I chaired a women inclusion network.
which would have had like 800 active members. So there was a really good opportunity there to help outside of what my direct responsibility was, empower people, that's women and allies, both personally, professionally. We set up like a wellbeing structure, which was so important, particularly that was during COVID and from there forward. And we got to do a lot within the community, so able to work with Women's Aid and different organisations and really try to give something back. So I loved all of that. As well as that then, outside of my, I suppose, direct professional career, I have always had a love of public speaking. So my mum started it all off and she put me on the stage of the Guildhall in Derry when I was 3. And so that has continued all throughout my life. Whenever I was a young student at university, I achieved my teacher's diploma in public speaking and communication skills, and I've taught that then for, I'm really trying not to age myself, but I've taught that for like nearly 25 years at this stage. So, and it's something that I still have, and I had all these young people that I was working with, including my own children, who were really confident getting up there on stage and speaking to big audiences and enjoying it. And look, it's something that I'm very passionate about, that I feel no matter what industry any of us go into, it's something that you need to be able to get up to speak. And it doesn't have to be to large audiences. I suppose what I was seeing within the people that I was managing, particularly in those last 3 areas where they were very highly technically specialised people. They knew a lot more than me about the areas that we were talking about, but a lot of them either could not or did not want to put themselves out there to speak, whether it was lead really high profile projects, which were then going to give them the promotion opportunities that they also wanted, that they just, I suppose, felt like this was something that they didn't want to do or that they weren't comfortable in doing. And I really saw that as an opportunity for me to really add value on a much bigger scale than I could do in a particular employment role in a job. So I started to do some of that, obviously, within kind of my leadership role, but where I knew I could add value more was actually to be independent of all of that. So you're totally right, and I had to talk my parents and other people into the fact that this was actually a really good decision. But I suppose they knew and trusted me too, to know that, look, she doesn't do these things by half. She's done her research. She knows that there's opportunities there. And actually, just over this short period of time since I've gone fully into this, I'm working with career professionals. I'm working with a lot of business owners and businesses, and also something that I didn't actually look for and expect, but very naturally, I've fallen into doing a lot of work in public sector and local government here. And really, I suppose it's really helped me see that the research that I'd done and the expectation that I had, that a lot of people need this. I'm seeing it even more and even more quickly than I was expecting to. So, you always see the stat around 75% of people have like a fear of public speaking. And I really want to, first of all, demystify that and help people understand that they're just skills and experiences that people get the opportunity to work through. And then it's like anything, once you've done it a few times and you've tested yourself, actually you start to enjoy it, and then you're seeking out opportunities to do more. So, you're Mr. TEDx here, so
well, I don't know about that. I had the easy job. I was sat off the stage.
Well, you had a great job curating all of that.
It's brilliant. Obviously, early stages then of your self-employed career. What would you say to anybody maybe thinking about it or in that stage?
Yeah.
What would you say are the biggest challenges that you've faced in getting that self-employed career?
Yeah.
What are the highs as well? What are the contrasting elements of it at this stage for you?
That's a good question to make me think back over. So thank you. So look, challenges are, first of all, I think you want to make sure that you have an idea that something. So how I've really thought of this over the last few months is, and the story that I've told there so far, that you're combining a purpose. So it wants to be something really purposeful. And for me, I found I needed to combine that with something that I was passionate about. So I suppose for a long time I knew that if I was going to do something like this is exactly what I would do, because it was actually like bringing more of me to the surface than ever was able to be in a work life before. So in terms of the highs, if I go into the high side of it, that's definitely been a high, being able to bring all of that out and seeing how that's actually working out. We're only talking about a short period of time, but I have some really good opportunities, some really good ideas, and I know that bit is only getting started. In terms of the challenges, there's definitely a lot of challenges. You've mentioned already, if you're leaving the security of, a job role and everything that so there's definitely the challenge too in making sure that the idea that passion and purpose aligning that I talked about, that's actually something that's going to have marketability and is going to work in that way. So I was doing a lot of research in the background, talking to people, and then as I was taking the leap, I think, what would you say, so it's a really considered leap of faith, but definitely I didn't know anywhere near as much as I know now. So I definitely think there's challenges around making sure that you're getting the right decisions for you that's going to work for your life and at a time in your life too. I think I have 3 children. The youngest is going to primary 1 now, and I wouldn't have taken this leap any sooner because, well, it's given me 20 years of experience behind me, but also, I wanted my children to be at a stage too where, I suppose I had a bit more security around things, and I can take that little bit more of an income gap leap of faith. Challenges too then in terms of, and look, people are going to be looking at this and they're going to be coming from very different backgrounds and industries and wanting to go into maybe very different future plans. I think as long as you really understand what you're going into, that's going to be a big part of it. But there's obviously that challenge about getting yourself out there. You're going to have existing people within that market or industry that are already very established, doing all of that. So I think you can kind of mitigate that challenge in itself too by making sure that you are coming up with something that's really authentic to you, but that might be a little bit different than what's out there. And then you're really just trying to get that messaging out. I suppose too, if you're looking for, some people might be looking for funding and different things like that. I've really tried to just base it on, the area that I know very well and starting kind of organically in that way. And I suppose we're talking about challenges, and then I'm automatically going to the how did I try to overcome those? But a lot of it too then has been for me around mindset. So just having that kind of resilience and building that up and that kind of mental picture of why I'm doing what I'm doing, and then trying to, knowing that good things will come as you just keep working through and working through.
Yeah, very interesting. I know you sort of said about finding that market and things like that, and it was very only this morning I was reading something, and I was talking to some of the guys behind the scenes before this, and I got an email from a lady. She owns an organisation, Clout, in England, Amelia Sodali, but she sent out an email this morning, and I was reading through it, and it was about one of her clients, and he had grown his business quite well, but what he had done was gone into like all the Google reviews and different reviews of all his competitors,
right?
And he didn't look at the positive ones, he looked at more towards the negative end of reviews. And after looking down them all, he found out what the problem was, solved them, and then went to the customers.
Find the gap in the market.
And sort of said, these people are having all these problems. So when it was negative, he noted what that negativity was and created a solution for the negativity. And like, what a smart way, because he was going up against competition, but what he was solving was the problem that his competition weren't able to solve. And I thought that was a very smart way of marketing. That's very clever.
Very smart. And I think as well then that could work in any industry for any problem, any issue, because actually those people were taking the time to give the feedback and putting it out there. And maybe those existing business owners were trying to solve it, but he's gone in with a very narrow focus of, I'm just going to find the low-hanging fruit and work with that. And I love that.
Yeah,
I go and do that myself now.
Yeah, I know, that's it. That's what I'm thinking now, right? Who are my competitors and
exactly.
how do I find their reviews? Yeah, is a big thing. So thinking about everything there that you've sort of talked about and coming into that role of self-employment and in that speaking space or communication space, if you could give 3 tips to our listeners on better communication, what would they be? What would your 3 best tips be on?
Yeah. Well, the first one actually then would be exactly what I mentioned about the mindset. So what I found is, as I've been working with, so I've been doing this for a long time in a slightly different capacity, and then brought the 2 things together. But people that I've been working with this year, nearly every single person started with me by saying, I'm terrible at this, or I can't speak at this, and I don't like my voice and things like that, or I'm fine in a one-to-one setting, but when I go into a bigger setting with meetings and leading teams and whatever that is. So the first message that I would give in terms of all of that is actually how you speak to yourself. So, and that mindset. And, if you're internalizing all of that and automatically talking yourself out of it, it's not going to be, you're not really going to be successful in your messaging, because you're coming then with that kind of like lower energy in terms of, this is going to be terrible. And your audience member, whether that's just 2 colleagues that you're sitting with or whether it's 100 people, they're going to get that energy off from you, and they're going to think automatically, gosh, I can't wait till this is over, because they're not loving this, so I'm not going to get the best out of it. So I think that's the first one, is how you're speaking to yourself and your mindset. The second one is too, and I really leverage those, my communication skills and public speaking, actually teaching. And when I am working with people, I actually go through with them those technical skills around breathing, around what we call in the industry vocal variety, which is all your pitch, your pace, your pause, your inflection, your tone, and your resonance. So there's actually, in helping your communication skills, you're going to be a lot more competent, confident, and prepared if you've actually studied some of those skills. And then it's like anything, once you've kind of gone through the information behind it, you've tried it a few times, you're going to be a lot better. The third thing is too, and I don't know if you'll know about Professor Albert Mehrabian and that communication model around the 7-38-55%. So 7% being the what you say, and everybody really focuses on the words that they're preparing. 38% of it then being what I mentioned before, that actual, what I would call the vocal variety side, but the how you're saying those words. And that's great. If you've got those 2 sorted, you're at 45%. But then you go, okay, what's the rest of it? And that other 55% is the critical bit to winning people over and influencing. Because to me, all of this communication is actually, and particularly in a business context, is about influencing people to agree with your message and go along with whatever you're trying to win them over on. And that is around body language and the non-verbal communication. So really focusing on that part of it as well. In the business context, I always bring that straight into executive presence. So, if you're setting yourself forward as a leader, you want to make sure that people are looking at you in that way, and they're looking at your confidence and your credibility and your authority that you're bringing. And to me then, it's that body language bringing into executive presence makes that all come together.
Very interesting you say that, because I've had 2 different conversations in different sectors, one being with some sports coaches and sports people. One of the messages I was talking about was that your body language has to match what you're saying, because there were some things around different performance, and I'm saying if you were saying something motivational but your body language is saying the opposite, and 100%. In a sporting context that is that somebody's made a mistake, and you're throwing an encouraging message to try and raise that performance, but your body language is saying that was shite, that was awful, then that's the message they receive.
Totally.
And what then will happen with that individual is that they become hypersensitive to that body language, and all of a sudden they are now no longer looking at their performance, what they're trying to do is please you, or do something to counteract what has just happened, and the performance will actually go down and down rather than up and up. So it says it's about the way that you send these messages, and the same happens in education, that if you're trying to give feedback, and I always talk about in a lot of environments that we spend too much time on feedback and not enough time on feed forward. And what I talk about that is, how are you setting the expectation? Not once it's done, you
something that's in the past.
If you keep setting and create visible expectations and keep setting that expectation as a visibility of something that we're aspiring to, and keep pushing the message towards that, it becomes a much easier conversation than you telling them what went wrong or how to get there. You just keep. So if they do something that meets the standard that you're looking for, you need to tell them and remind them, that's it, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Repeat that, just keep repeating that, and I am happy. We don't do that. We wait until the mistakes come and tell them when they've made a mistake, and don't give the feed forward.
You're not giving the positivity.
It's always about the feedback, and I'm going, the real art of, for me, in terms of performance and higher performance, is the art of feed forward.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense.
Get that visual expectation.
And the other bit that you rightly said as well around the, the body language and that kind of messaging. So whenever I'm working with like leaders on this, a lot of what I talk about is that congruence between, what you're saying and how you're saying it. And, you could very easily use the analogy of me maybe talking to you now and saying, like this, kind of going like, yeah, it's great to be here, and look, I'm doing the words and the tone and it's sound, but actually like I'm all closed off and I look like she doesn't seem happy. So, and also the bit that you're mentioning about, when people do then go, people are very intuitive and we don't learn any of these things, but when you're realizing, oh, something's off there, and it should be a pattern. There's a number of areas of nonverbal communication that you're kind of trained to look at. And it should be that pattern of more than one, because maybe the person's got a sore arm, maybe that's the one reason. But, whenever you start, and when that seems off, then your audience don't trust you. And then they're starting to think like, oh, I don't know, like the words may as well be anything at that stage, because, it's so important to have, to understand it.
And I think that's very important, is understanding people's story as well, because obviously TEDx tells us that some people on that stage, like Amy May, you just see her as an amazing person that has stood on the biggest stages in the world of river dance, and she tells this story that none of us knew about. Yeah, totally. You know what I mean? And you're going like, and that's what her message was, that everybody has a very individual and different story. Yeah, so I think that's really, really important, and understand that. Yeah. Because do you know of Malcolm Gladwell? Good, brilliant author. And it's very interesting from a leadership role. We talk about conflict in the workplace and how to deal with conflict and this sort of thing. And Malcolm Gladwell, a few years ago, had said something, and I thought it really, really struck home to me, in that people aren't afraid of conflict in the workplace. They're afraid of neglect. So conflict is that ability to go in and have conversation and challenge and resolve. Whereas neglect is where I ignore things. So, I always say the reward for being good at your job is usually more of what you do. Yes, you get more of it, definitely. And you'll hear me talk about that. So I'll always ask, is the job punishing? When I go into a consultancy role, and they say, well, what do you mean by that? I says, well, is their performance being good actually punishing them? And they say, well, what's that? Well, more work, or that they have to take work home and they don't get it done in the time. I say, so that job actually becomes punishing. So that becomes a performance problem. And how do we look at that and solve that problem? And that's the sort of thing where if we're ignoring that, then that's neglect in the workplace. Whereas instead of dealing with the problem is that maybe other people aren't at the same level as that person. So we're going to have those conflict conversations to resolve that. We then raise the performance of everybody. But at the moment, what we're doing is loading more work on. And do you know what?
The good people.
And the problem is they still aren't performing at their best performance, because they have more workload than what other people do. So the reality is that you're actually suppressing the workload. Even though they look better than everybody else, they're still not high performing, because we are suppressing them with punishment.
And they're not being empowered probably in that example, I would imagine they're not empowered to doing new and challenging work for them. They're just getting asked to do more and more volume of work that they can do. So, and sometimes, like I've seen this a lot through my work and through friends that, you know, have good careers as well. Those people continue to get asked to do more and more. They maybe get, you know, doing a lot of side moves, which can be really good to make you an all-rounder, but they're not the people then that get promoted because they're seen as so trusted in that area that nobody actually wants to free them up to move in, and then they leave and they go elsewhere. So it's just a really, it's punishing the company.
And I say, you know, just imagine if you got everybody performing and you dealt with those conflict situations that are going to arise. As a good leader, you have to be able to have those hard conversations. And if you go and solve that or find solutions for those performance issues, that it frees up the time for the individual that is the good performer in your eyes. But they could, I said, just imagine what the potential is of that individual. What could they be doing for you in terms of having that time to dedicate into those high performance standards? And it's something that frustrates me, and I think Malcolm Gladwell really struck that when he said it's not the conflict,
well, that's
it's
all
the
about
neglect.
No, totally. And in those cases, like, and I suppose leaders always have to be looking about their talent management and their succession plan. So those are the people that they want to come up, but they need to actually give them, like, empower them with the skills to do that. And I think that's one of the things. Sometimes if people are doing a job well, they might get promoted, but then now they're in a completely different type of role, and maybe they're managing people for the first time. There's a lot missed there, I think, in middle management where people don't.
The accidental manager. I had it. You know, I got promoted to a management job because I was good at my job. And you go, I don't have the skills. I've never managed somebody, and then it was only through some training that I realised I need more of this because. And it's that lack of training, I think, sometimes is that because we do have this tendency to say, they're excellent at that job, let's give them a job as a manager.
Let's get them, but they can't actually develop other people as
yet. But the problem is then they don't have that management skill set or the leadership skill set. And that can be developed. And some people are more comfortable not being managers and leaders. And that's something we also have to accept as employers. Very interesting. Just two more questions maybe that I'd like to ask you. So before we get to the last one, I'm just thinking about, obviously there are speaker coaches and speaking coaching and communication coaching, and we see more and more of that as a service at the moment. What makes you unique?
Well, first of all, you're right. There are a lot of that, and I'm delighted to see more and more, because to me, like, I would love if this was something that was in the school curriculum that people learned at a really young age, because the younger you learn these things, the easier it's going to be. So, but what makes me unique is that I'm really focused on the business communication side. So helping, whether that is, you know, quite new and scaling business owners, established businesses. As I said, I've done some stuff with public sector, and also like the kind of higher end leaders within career and corporate life. I like to work with them and really focus on, you know, articulating their message with impact and influence, doing the storytelling side of it. And I think if I didn't have those 20 years of getting to be quite senior business experience behind me, so in the last few years of my role, I was really only facing off to managing director level, global managing director level. So that really kind of gave me that, a lot of testing, but a lot of kind of credibility to and authority to move into this type of world. So I've really brought those two things together over the last 20 years or more, having that strong business and leadership background, and then the actual public speaking side of it. And, you know, it's actually the combination of bringing those two things together, which, from what I'm regularly told, is making me quite unique in being able to, I suppose, help senior leaders solve issues, because I've already worked through and solved those as well.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And thank you for that. But we're on to the last question. This is
concerning. Sounds
yes,
concerning.
it is concerning, because During our first series of the podcast, we'd done this thing called the ChatGPT question, and what we would have done was fed in your information into ChatGPT and ask it to create a question.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting. We got some challenge. But this series, we're going a different direction.
Okay.
And I'm now reframed this because our very first guest was a lady by the name of Emily Bond in this episode. And Emily is a resident rocket scientist. So when I was trying to come up with a question that we would finish, do you remember the program Room 101? I was thinking about that, and I was saying, right, and the idea of that was, what do you want to put into Room 101?
Right, okay.
So I come up with a question was, if you could shoot something off into space,
yes,
what would it be and why?
Okay. All right. Well, I'm no rocket scientist, but I have something on that. And this might be quite controversial, actually, in what I say, but, let's go there.
That's the idea of the question.
Great, okay. So I would actually shoot off into space and put in Room 101 the term imposter syndrome, because I actually feel a lot of people, and in my conversations and around, communication, messaging, a lot of people maybe feel automatically that, okay, and I mentioned it earlier, but it isn't for them, they can't do it. And I think it's nearly given people something that they can kind of hide behind. Not that they want to, but it's made it like an acceptable place that you can go and kind of say, oh, I'm not good at these things, or, I'm not a leader, and that sort of thing. So I suppose I have been approaching everything in my own development and in what I'm teaching people around, let's just not give that any attention. Let's think from the mindset and what you're actually able to do. And, if there are gaps, let's look at those gaps and resolve them. So for me, and maybe it's, working with women too, because there's a lot, and I don't only work with women, but, there's a lot of talk with maybe women and imposter syndrome. And to me, there shouldn't be, that's something that if we look at where we want to get to and then take the steps to get there, it's something that I think that we could resolve a way off to the past and not give it a lot of time and a lot of structure.
I love it.
That's me.
I absolutely love that, because I've sort of been in agreement with you there on when we create a pigeonhole for something, or a box for something, that we will constantly put things into it.
It legitimizes, that there's, you just won't be able to do it.
I spent years doing some work in additional needs, working with young people 16 to 24 with additional needs. And I found a lot of the concerns and challenges that they were faced is that they'd been pigeonholed, they'd been boxed, they'd been put in one of these boxes of what they can or can't do, because they presented specific types of behaviours or challenges. And so I love that, that when we remove that element of it, it's like
ripping the plaster off and going ahead.
So I absolutely love that. And
well, that's good. So that could have been awkward.
That's I think the guy used to pull the lever when he agreed with 101. So
right.
We're going to pull the lever on that one.
Yeah, the Graham Norton chair.
So we totally agree on it. Louise, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast, and good luck with such early stage of your career, or self-employed career.
Yes, well, thank you. It's been great to learn from you, and I'm keen to work with anybody that kind of feels that they want to. I suppose you should always end everything with a call to action.
Yeah.
And to me, the call to action is, if anyone's listening to this and they feel that, sometimes their communication skills, as I say, whether it's just in a team setting or much bigger, or they feel that they can't articulate themselves clearly with authority and impact, if you feel that any of that resonates with you and that's holding you back, take action to change it, because you will find yourself in a place that you have so many more opportunities because you enjoy speaking about what you're passionate about.
100%.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louise.
Thank you.